Almighty God, we pray for your blessing upon this council. Help and prosper its work for the advancement and benefit of its people, so that peace and happiness, unity and justice may be established among us all. Amen. Manningham Council acknowledges the Wurundjeri Woiwurrung people as traditional owners of lands and waterways now known as Manningham. Council pays respect to elders past, present and emerging and values their ongoing contribution to enrich and appreciate the cultural heritage of Manningham. Manningham Council acknowledges Australia's First Peoples as traditional owners of lands and waterways across country and encourages reconciliation between all. Manningham Council also values the contribution made to Manningham over the many years of people of diverse backgrounds and cultures. Welcome everybody, and I welcome all members of the public who have joined us in person and online to observe tonight's proceedings. I would like to advise that tonight's meeting is being audio and video recorded. All care will be taken to maintain your privacy. However, as a visitor in the public gallery, your presence may be recorded. By remaining in the gallery, it is assumed your consent is given in the event that your voice and or image is broadcast by Council. Council meetings are conducted in accordance with our governance rules. I will introduce each item of business as listed on the agenda, calling it by number and by reading the title. I will then call for a mover and a seconder of a motion on the item before opening any debate. Only councillors are able to join the debate on an item. Councillors may adopt the officer's recommendation in the report or propose amendments and supplementary motions. I would like to draw your attention to item 7 on tonight's agenda, public question time, which provides an opportunity for people to ask questions of the council. Council has allocated 30 minutes for question time at tonight's meeting, and the process for public question time is set out in our governance rules. Questions must be received prior to the start of the meeting to be asked. Where we receive advance notice of a question in accordance with our governance rules, we will provide a verbal response to the question at our meeting. Questions we receive up to 7 p.m. today may be taken on notice if we don't have the information on hand to provide a meaningful response. If this happens, you'll be provided with a written response to your question within 10 working days. I will deal with a maximum of 2 questions per person and 2 questions on any one issue. You will be asked to come forward to the lectern to ask your question, where you'll have the opportunity to provide a 2-minute introductory statement before asking your question. If you have more than 2 questions, please submit these additional questions in writing to Council through the normal channels. To ensure the efficient conduct of our meeting and maximum participation during question time, all questions and answers shall be as brief as possible and no discussion is permitted on any question. Councillors and the gallery are reminded that question time is to be conducted in a respectful manner and any disorderly conduct will be managed in accordance with our governance rules. Item number 2, apologies and requests for leave of absence. There are no apologies. Councillors, are there any requests for leave of absence? None noted. Item number 3, prior notification of conflict of interest. So no prior notifications of conflict of interest have been received. Would anyone like to give a notice of conflict of interest?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I would like to declare a material conflict of interest in confidential item 18.1 on the agenda this evening, as this matter relates to my performance and remuneration.
Thank you, CEO. Councillors, are there any other conflicts of interest to note? None noted. Item number 4, confirmation of minutes. Do I have a mover? Councillor Anna Chen. Do I have a second?
Mayor. I move that the minutes of the council meeting held on 26 September 2023 be confirmed.
Thank you, Councillor Chen. Do I have a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Conlon. All those in favour? And it is carried unanimously. Thank you, councillors. Item number 5, presentations.
Excuse me, Madam Mayor, sorry to interrupt. We're just having a problem with the feed and we need to restart the live stream.
Okay.
Was there
To pause the meeting, councillors. We've got a problem with the feed. We need to restart the live stream. We'll resume the meeting after our interruption to the live stream feed. We've had item number 4 where we confirmed the minutes. We'll now move to item number 5, presentations. And I have 2 presentations. And the first one is for our very own Councillor Stephen Mayne for a 10-year service award. I'm pleased to advise at the recent Municipal Association of Victoria's annual dinner held on the 12th of October this year, Councillor Stephen Mayne received an award to acknowledge his 10 years of outstanding service to local government. Councillor Stephen Mayne is a long-standing Manningham resident who first joined council in 2008 to 2012. He became councillor at City of Melbourne between 2012 and 16 and rejoined Manningham in 2020 as the councillor for Ruffey Ward. Councillor Stephen Mayne is passionate about politics, good governance and prioritising transparency in decision-making, advocating for reducing gambling harm and securing positive outcomes for the Capital Works program and council budget. As a result of his advocacy, we have extended library hours and launched the Warrandyte Open Library. We've also expanded our Capital Works program. With Councillor Mayne's insights, and we have progressed our strategic property portfolio, which has been partly shaped by him. On behalf of my fellow councillors, the Manningham community and the organisation, I would like to thank Councillor Stephen Mayne for his dedication and service to the Manningham community. And I have a second presentation, councillors. Item 5.2, Finn Huber, World Indoor Cricket Federation. So, councillors, Finn is a local Manningham resident. He is now a world champion. Finn, aged 13, recently returned from Dubai, where he represented Australia in the World Indoor Cricket Federation Junior World Cup. The team spent 2 weeks in Dubai, where they played against teams from 7 countries. Australia won the tournament, defeating South Africa in the grand final. Finn was selected to play in the 13 and under Australian team after representing Victoria in the national tournament, which was played in Ipswich earlier this year. Finn plays cricket locally at Templestowe Cricket Club in the under-14 side and with the seniors first team. A talented and grounded young man, I am confident Finn will continue to excel in his sporting endeavours. Please join me in congratulating Finn on his outstanding achievement. I'll move on to item number 6, petitions. 6.1, petition concerning GFIT Jim Bulleen. Do I have a mover?
Madam Mayor, I move that the petition I've got the wrong page. The petition with 10 signatures requesting council vacate the GFIT gym from the residential area due to the stress and inconvenience of the neighbourhood to be received and referred through to the appropriate officer for consideration. And I've got this petition that I'd like to put through for that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Goff. Do I have a seconder?
I second the motion.
Thank you, Councillor Carly Lang. All those in favour? Thank you, councillors, and that's carried unanimously. Item number 7, public question time. So we do have one question from the public, and I might ask Teddy Jewler and Michael Jewler to come up to the lectern, please. So, Teddy, I'll give you 2 minutes to read out your background and your question.
I got the idea to propose at this recent school excursion last Tuesday, 26th of October. I'd love to propose a donut day. The purpose of the donut day is to get to know people in the community and for everyone to have fun. Ruffy Lake Park is a good venue to hold the event. It has sheltered picnic areas and playgrounds. I recommend Krispy Kreme Donuts in Bulleen to provide the donuts because of quality and variety. Thank you for considering the suggestion.
Do you want to ask your question now, Teddy?
Could the council consider this question and provide a response?
Thank you very much, Teddy. I'm going to ask our CEO, Mr. Andrew Day, to provide a response.
Teddy, thank you for the question, and I'm glad that you enjoy Ruffy Lake Park. It's a fantastic venue, and I think it's a really good idea. So what we're going to do is I'll get one of my team to have a think about that idea that you've got. It's a really great idea, and we're going to come back to you. We'll write back to you, get in contact with you via your dad with a response, and we can perhaps explore it a little bit more with you. So thanks very much for coming and asking the question tonight. Really appreciate it.
Thank you, Teddy, and you're welcome to stay and watch the rest of the council meeting if you would like. Thank you. Do we have any other questions in the gallery? All right, I'll move on to item number 8, admission of urgent business, and there are no items of urgent business. Item number 9, planning permit applications. 9.1, planning application PLN 22/0462 at 7 2nd Street, Warrandyte, for a 2-lot subdivision and associated works, including creation of access and removal of one Victorian native tree. Do I have a mover?
That the recommendation be adopted.
Thank you, Councillor Lang. Do I have a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Conlon. Councillor Lang, would you like to speak to the motion?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Councillors, bear with me while I articulate this planning application and make it clear for myself and the community. This property is zoned in a neighbourhood residential zone and is covered by 3 overlays: a design and development overlay, an environmental significance overlay, and a bushfire management overlay. The surrounds are residential in nature between this area of Pound Bend and Taroona Avenue. Dwellings are generally 1 to 2 stories in scale, and vegetation coverage varies as the topography of the land varies, some being more steep and some being flat. Lot sizes vary too. Some are less than 1,000 square metres and some are over 2,000 square metres. Councillors, 35 objections were received for this planning subdivision permit. The objections raised were about the failure for this proposal to respond to neighbourhood character, the planning scheme, negative impacts on flora and fauna, and the impact on traffic and bushfire concerns, as well as the residential amenity. Due to these formal objections, the community concerns, the overlay and planning requirements, and CFA approval, the proposed subdivision at 7 2nd Street now has many conditions imposed on it. I will go through these conditions, and there are many. Number 1, the reduction of the building envelope, where Lot 2 is to be no more than 25% of the site area, by increasing the setbacks to the neighbours and preventing the building works outside of the building envelope. Number 2, vegetation removal on Lot 2 will be offset by the introduction of high-quality Indigenous vegetation and complementary tree shrubs and understory planting through a Section 173 agreement to be registered on the future title for this lot. This will ensure whether there is a permit permitted to build the dwelling or not, the landscaping vegetation obligations must be carried out. A further permit condition requires at least 2 Indigenous trees to Lot 1 to be additionally planted and screening planting to go along the northern boundary. This planting would be required before issuing a statement of compliance to subdivide the land. Another new Section 173 agreement ensures that the 16-metre old oak tree be retained and maintained. The future built form will sit well beneath this 16-metre canopy height and will be a subordinate feature. And this old English oak will also be irrigated and have a system where it is safeguarded as well as the surrounding vegetation. Another new condition prevents the English oak from being removed, lopped or destroyed during construction. This requires the English oak to be maintained to an optimal health and pruned by a qualified arborist, as it has significant high arboricultural value. The bush management plan requires the common access way to be kept for natural grade for safety, minimising excavation works. In response to the CFA, a new proposal has been put to have the access way increased to 4.5 metres in lieu of the 4.1 advertised. And this then would mean a 500 metre clearance on either side of the 3-metre gravel access way. Another condition, the updated bushfire management plan has been issued with a new increased bell rating for a future dwelling that could be built on Lot 2, ensuring that it has fire safety. Another permit condition has minimised the earthworks and removed associated retaining walls with the works, and works are only to be limited to the turning area for emergency vehicle access and to minimise land disruption. Another condition, Lot 2 is to be maintained to its gentle slope topography to prevent excavation, trenching or soil removal from the drip line of the old English oak. There is a condition about the deletion of the internal fencing between lots 1 and 2 in favour
Councillor,
of...
time.
Could I please ask for an extension?
Can I ask someone to move this motion?
I'd like to move for an extension of time.
Do I have a seconder? All those in favour? That's carried. You have a further 2 minutes, councillor.
Thank you. There's also the condition of the deletion of internal fencing between lots 1 and 2 in favour of landscaping for wildlife movements and less bulk form. There's a pre-construction landscaping and increased landscaping condition for Indigenous screening types and specimens for both lots. Service utilities must be connected to the existing services to minimise stormwater runoff. There are now permit expiry conditions, and finally an updated plan of subdivision to reflect all the above conditions addressing the community's concerns. So my thoughts. I acknowledge that from the outset, not many in this area want subdivisions. Community members like myself live in this area for the open spaces, building separation and wildlife, where housing is less compact. I would personally choose to live in this area because of its bush setting and its semi-rural feel. Warrandyte's wildlife is important, and the wildlife is just as important as the humans. We are lucky to be in this bush setting. I, like the community, want to be ethically and environmentally responsible with all development in this area. So what must councillors consider? First, is the subdivision appropriate in the planning context? Are the vegetation impacts acceptable? Are the arrangements for traffic and impact acceptable? And does the subdivision respond to the planning controls? It does, and therefore, if I objected, I would be irresponsible. Thank you.
Thank you, councillor. Councillor Andrew Conlon, would you like to speak to the motion?
Sure. Thank you, Councillor Lang, for moving this motion. It is a difficult thing when people are, developing in other people's vicinity and it's seen as inappropriate. But the reason we have planning law is to give people certainty about what is possible and what shouldn't be done. And from what I understand of the report, and I think I congratulate the officers for going to so much work to look at all the residents' and objectors' concerns, and to add that list of long list of conditions such that we get the best outcome for the community. But we do have to have certainty, and we can't just say, well, we like this part of the law, we don't like that part of the law. It is the law, and therefore I don't believe we have any choice but to accept the officer's recommendation and avoid a long drawn-out objection process, which would likely go before VCAT, which would be at our cost for council if we were to object, particularly given the officer's recommendation to grant the planning permit. So, I unfortunately, well, I shouldn't say unfortunately. It is what it is, and I think we should support this. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Conlon. Do I have any speakers against the motion? Do I have any other speakers for the motion? Councillor Goff.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. And unfortunately, I think I haven't been persuaded to vote against this, but I've been contemplating to do so in some ways. I am one for, I suppose, looking at our area of Manningham and putting development where development needs to be, and perhaps not where it isn't to be. But this clearly does fit in, and I don't believe, now I could be wrong, please interject if you know the answer. Is it part of the township area? I think the answer is no. It's not part of the township. Is it zoned part of township? If it's zoned part of township, it's one thing. If it's not zoned that, then we are in a DDO3 area, we are in a protected area, we're near the river. But this report brought shocks to me in that it could be divided into 1 to 300 square metres. And this far exceeds that because it's 1,000 square metres, which is quite a large block in anyone's terms. But it will change the nature of that corridor between the main road and the river into that whole area. It will drastically change it because we do this here, and believe me, all the way around there, all of those blocks are going to be wanting to do the same thing, and we won't have a leg to stand on in an argument back. So I read the report, and it's going to go on this way, and I'm probably happy to support that. However, bear in mind that this will have ramifications for the future. It's an area that has up to this stage been left intact. It will not be left intact into the future.
Thank you, Councillor Goff. Do I have any other speakers to the motion?
I'd like to close.
Thank you, Councillor Lang.
Thank you. This proposal is consistent with the neighbourhood area, subdivisions close to public transport links, lot sizes, retention of vegetation, existing access ways and minimal earthworks. It has limited vegetation impacts. It has increased biodiversity planting through its conditions. It has appropriate access arrangements. It has a reduced envelope and a preferred size and setting and setback arrangements, which is consistent in the DDO3. Its layout is consistent to a residential subdivision, and its further setbacks have reduced visual amenity. Maybe if we don't like what Councillor Goff is talking about, where we can subdivide to 1,000 square metres, maybe we can advocate for new planning laws which go for 2,000 square metres, one dwelling for 2,000 square metres. But that is not what we're talking about tonight. The offer recommendation has included multiple conditions to cover off issues such as decreased building envelope, vegetation protection and improvements, change fencing conditions on site to allow for wildlife movements, is compliant with the CFA requirements. It has been having the addition of better quality Indigenous vegetation at the front and the rear, and furthermore, the subdivision sizes comply with the planning scheme and minimal lot size setbacks. Therefore, I will be supporting this motion tonight, and it is up to my fellow councillors to do so or not. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Lang. I will put that to a vote. All those in favour? And that's carried unanimously. Thank you, councillors. Item number 10, City Planning. 10.1, endorsement of final affordable housing policy. Do I have a mover?
I move that the recommendation be adopted.
Thank you, councillor Laura Main. And do I have a seconder? Councillor Thomas Lightbody. Councillor Laura Main, would you like to speak to the motion?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. I'm so excited to be moving our final policy. It's been a really thorough process. We engaged a consultant and really took into consideration all the different approaches and the opportunity costs that were at play. I would like to clarify to the Park community that this policy is about affordable housing that is subsidised rent for those in need and not about general housing affordability. That's often a point of confusion. So our approach in this policy is to enter negotiations with developers when they submit something with over 30 dwellings. So it's to have a really targeted approach, and it's not targeting those classic mum and dad townhouse developments. It's a clear point to clarify. Though this policy does outline a focus on advocacy, mainly through the Eastern Affordable Housing Alliance, of which I am the Deputy Chair of. As of late, we really have been pursuing our Preventing Homelessness in Older Women project. We had an all-day workshop last week and have another one coming up, and it's been really great work. Sad to content, but good work to advocate towards getting out to the community. And we have this focus on advocacy because the state government has not included mandatory inclusionary zoning, so all we as a local council can do is merely negotiate with developers. Though with this final policy, there has been really great consultation with the community. I really loved how we had a really targeted approach, and we had some really great submissions from people who really understood the sector very well. So I'd like to thank the officers for their work in this area and their work on this policy, and I'm really looking forward to see it play out. Thank you so much.
Thank you, councillor Main. Councillor Lightbody, would you like to speak to the motion?
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. I think it's really important that as a council we can do as much as we can for affordable housing. I think we are quite limited in what we can do, but this is really working towards increasing the amount of affordable housing that's in multi-resident developments within our municipality. I think what is disappointing is that the biggest way that we could help increase affordable housing would be if we had the powers to require developments to have affordable housing through inclusive zoning, which is quite successful in many countries, including similar countries like the United Kingdom. So I think given our lack of ability to do that, I think we're doing a lot in terms of making sure that we're giving the officers the ability to negotiate, giving the officers the ability to go in with open minds when they start having discussions about applications from large developments, to make sure that we can do our best to increase affordable housing. I think we've got some successful examples in Manningham where we've got housing for people with disabilities so that they can take steps towards being independent from their families. And I think hopefully we can continue doing good work like that in the future with this policy. Thank you.
Thank you, councillor Lightbody. Do I have any speakers against the motion? Do I have any other speakers for the motion? Well, I will put that to a vote. All those in favour? And again, that's carried unanimously. Thank you, councillors. Item number 10.2, housing reform announcements, implications for Manningham. Do I have a mover? Councillor Conlon.
Yes, I'd like to move that the recommendation be adopted.
Thank you, councillor. And do I have a seconder?
I'll second that one.
Thank you, councillor Stephen Main. Councillor Conlon, would you like to speak to the motion?
Yes, well, thank you, Mayor. Not that long ago, the then Premier Daniel Andrews decided to release a Victoria's Housing Statement, which is quite ironic because part of the Local Government Act is that we are forced, and it's a state government legislation, to consult when we make decisions. But this was just released without any consultation with the councils, and part of this motion is to ensure that we get some input into how this looks on the ground. Unfortunately, this whole statement starts with this assumption that the root of the problem is the supply of housing. The crazy thing is that I would say that the root of the problem is that we have way too many people coming into the country at the moment. There's 400,000 immigrants every year, and we don't have the capacity to house them. That's the issue. It's actually a federal issue, and we should be looking at trying to slow down supply so that we can catch up with housing. Another issue is that there's no incentive for builders or investors to actually build houses, partly because we have land tax increases. We've got overspending by the state government, which is forcing up the cost of materials all over the place. Building materials in particular is forcing a tight labour market. The consequence is higher interest rates from a growing economy, and all that means is that there's no incentive for an investor to buy a block of land and build a house on it, because they'll never get get a return on it in terms of rent. And I say the issue is actually the state government's making, and they're putting the blame on councils for slowing down approvals. And we approve stuff and stuff doesn't get built. That's the issue, because when people go to get a builder, they can't find a builder who can do it for the price anymore. And we have one of the best. I do have to congratulate our officers for the turnaround in our planning times, because within the 60 days, we are well over 90% in terms of approvals. So it's not councils that are slowing down the building; it's these other factors that are making it impossible. And then there's, like I said, there's way too much demand, and we don't have the capacity to do the supply. The objective of making 800,000 homes in the next 10 years is just absurd, in my view. But going back to the actual motion, this is about working together with other councils, both in the MAV and the Eastern Region Group, to try and get the state government to listen. And it's about the community needs to be aware of what it would mean if the state government takes over most of our planning. It's going to mean less rights for people to object, less understanding when people do object. And I think we do a great job of listening to people. As we've had one decision tonight, we 9 councillors looked at all that information and we made a informed decision on it, after having local experts in our local planning department make a great list of recommendations or conditions on that approval. So that is all going to disappear potentially with what the state government is proposing. And I cannot support the state government's approach in any measure, and this is part of the way that we can actually try and pare back what they're trying to do and make it at least palatable to the public. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Conlon. Councillor Stephen Mayne, would you like to speak to the motion?
Yes, so I strongly support the idea of the Mayor writing to the Planning Minister and the Premier, raising our concerns about this issue. Manningham Council has a terrific record on planning. If you read the report, 92% of applications processed within 60 days, 98.7% of VicSmart applications within the 10-day timeframe, only 22 appeals lodged over 806 decisions, and only 6 of those 22 appeals are upheld. So we're a fast, efficient, consultative, transparent, effective professional planning authority. And here comes the state government saying, we're going to throw all that up in the air, make Matthew Guy's reign as Planning Minister look like a damp squib. We're going to seize power from anything above 50 million. We're going to remove objection rights on a range of things. We're going to say anyone can build a granny flat if it's less than 60 square metres. We're going to have 4 cookie-cutter designs for big developments near transport hubs. And as Councillor Conlon said, there's been 0 meaningful consultation. I was expecting this would be a professionalisation of planning, perhaps New South Wales style, where you would see turbocharging of independent panels, where you would get professional panels approving things professionally. But this it sidetracks the panel concept and just puts all the power in the hand of the planning minister, Sonia Kilkenny, a politician, and not qualified in planning. So I was shocked when I saw the detail of this. I think it's great that the sector is uniting to caution the government to hasten more slowly. I personally think that the migration issue is not one that we can control or we should particularly be debating, nor can the state government control that. But I do agree with Councillor Conlon that with 120,000 dormant residences out there where we've issued the permit and construction hasn't started, such as the Church of Christ site over the road, the obvious fix is for the new HAF fund, federally or the state government, to buy enough apartments, to pre-buy, to make it economic for all these dormant permits to get going. We don't need a fast track to put more permits in the queue. We need reforms that will actually get the existing queue activated. And so I really think the state government is targeting the wrong issue here in terms of how this can be fixed. I'm worried about the fact that they're borrowing net $1 billion of new money a month. They've got $155 billion. That this is also part of a cash grab with land, with record levels of land tax, with the new Airbnb tax, with talks about the so-called windfall tax profits on rezonings, where it's even applied to councils. Of course we should be exempt from that. We're part of the state government. And so I just think this is very, very disappointing, and I'm very proud that Manningham can put its best foot forward with its performance. Brilliantly led by Fiona Trouse. Our planning department, I think, is one of the best in Melbourne, and the state government should not be taking a whack at councils like Manningham for what we do.
Thank you, Councillor. Time. Thank you, Councillor. Do I have any speakers against the motion? Do I have any other speakers for the motion? Councillor Lightbody.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I was thinking a lot about where to start with this, because it's such a big list of things that aren't great. And when I was thinking about this, I was at work yesterday doing the final presentations for the urban precinct planning studio that I teach at uni. And what that reminded me of was the amount of work that goes into planning precincts and planning our cities by people that work in the local area, often live in the local area, the amount of data that goes into that, the amount of time and effort and consultation that goes into that process. And what this does is essentially what Councillor Mayne did allude to, is that there's, the potential. It hasn't happened yet. Not necessarily saying it would happen in our community. But one of the things in this plan is a set of designs that you can buy off the shelf from the government and put anywhere in GRZ, General Residential Zone, if it's within a certain distance from a major public transport route. In Manningham, that's Doncaster Road, Doncaster/Mitcham Road. And we have GRZ zoning down to the Coonon Creek. We have GRZ zoning across most of the urban part of our municipality. We don't have what some other councils have in neighbourhood residential zones, and we haven't finished that process of trying to develop them. So it's quite concerning that they're looking at ways that you can bypass council plan, you can bypass proper architects. Sure, designs could be tweaked to a site, but the idea of them is they're quick off the shelf. Another concern is that for any property that does include affordable housing, you can fast track that. You can go straight to the minister. You can bypass council, and in the policy it says it has to have a minimum requirement of affordable housing for that to happen. But it also says in the fine print of that policy that requirement can be reduced, and it doesn't say what that requirement could be reduced to. Could it be reduced to 1%? Could it be reduced to one dwelling or part of one potentially? Could it be reduced to 0? So could you have a planning application that initially has affordable housing in it, and then you go to the planning minister, they start assessing it, then you decide to amend that and remove the affordable housing? Does that then stay with the planning minister? Does that get referred back to council? We don't know. There's a lot of questions and a lot of risks associated with these planning reforms. And I think it's really important that we as a council advocate to retain that ability, retain the ability for people to appeal decisions. A big part of this is decisions that are done with the Minister's office might not be appealable to VCAT. And I think that's something that's a
Thank
big
you,
risk. People can
Councillor.
object
Time.
and not follow. Thank you.
Sorry. Thank you, Councillor. Mr. Councillor Kleinert.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I think this is very concerning. I think it's, I hope that we unanimously endorse this, because this is about writing to the Minister and saying that we're not happy. Let's take as an example what we just approved tonight. There was 49 recommendations in order for this to meet the guidelines for Manningham. So 49 recommendations of council, because our officers know the area. There's all these overlays, there's all these BMOs, and I'm quite confident that didn't take 4 months, because there would have been a lot of toing and froing. There would have been a lot of departments to consult. There would have been a lot of externals to provide input. And the Minister, state government's going to take that away from us. We already lack power when you consider every 4 years we have to look at the planning scheme. State government gives us guidelines and says build up, not out, because when you build Melbourne out, that's a cost on state government. They've got to build roads and schools and hospitals. When you build up, it is imposing on us here in Manningham. And you take that away, that power for us every 4 years to, as much as possible, we push back with state government. And yes, if you live in Manningham, you feel like everything's, growing up fast and the environment's changing. Yes, it is. It is along the main roads of Manningham, because the planning scheme, we've done that. We've put density on main roads to keep the residential, to keep the Golden Mile, because we want diversity of plan. And yes, it is an environment that's changing. And tonight's decision, as an example, was a hard one. But locally, we sat there as councillors. Some of us spent hours and hours of toing and froing and looking and considering what's best. And they're not easy decisions to make, but we make them knowing our neighbourhood. The state government wants to rip that away. Another thing that gets ripped away and gets imposed on local government, and we can't do nothing. So we need to endorse this. It needs to be also given to every other council in the state to say, this is what we've done. Hopefully every other council puts it through their council meeting and to stands up and reminds their community that we're trying to stand up against state government, the big brother. We're like the little sisters all the time. We get pushed around, knocked around, and this is a really great knock in the guts. And this is not good for community. Yeah, there are some councils that don't perform, and they work hard to improve. A few years ago, we weren't doing so great, Manningham, but we worked hard, and I'm proud to say that I'm on a council that we went from not so great to excellent. And it took hard work, it took skill, it took time, but we got there, and other councils can as well. Instead of ripping it away, I don't see that's the solution. I see it's poor. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Sorry, I had trouble with my microphone then. Do I have any other speakers? Councillor Chen.
Thank you, Mayor. And the housing statement just frames the housing crisis as created by lack of housing supply. But there has been considerable planning reform in the past 15 to 20 years, but have done little to address housing affordability. Suggests that the housing affordability and housing supply is a complex issue. The housing statement means a loss of local decision-making. Removing planning powers from council is not going to fix the housing problem, because it is not where the problem is. Almost 120,000 dwellings are approved and ready to be built. But recent analysis have found that the number of houses, townhouses, apartments approved for construction but not commenced has soared to near record levels due to a number of issues. The soaring building costs, rising interest rates, and uncertainty linked to labor shortages. Nothing in the statement addressed the problem of developer led delays. In Manningham, our planning team not only meet but exceeds the target. The statement removes public appeal rights, means there will be reduced oversight and public transparency of the decision-making. What measures will be in place to prevent exploitation and to ensure appropriate public accountability? I can see that in the housing statement. And then it comes to future homes provisions. It applies to general residential zone. They are also not subject to submission, and appeal rights are of particular concern here. Because in Manningham, we have general residential zone that accounts 74% of residential land. And we have 2 major activity centers and 7 neighborhood centers in our urban area. So the future projects will have significant impact to our valued character in Manningham. That is the balance of city and country. Council is currently reviewing our residential strategy and some neighborhood character study, and will include some analysis that will also include, I understand, a lot of public consultations to resolve some policy gaps and conflicts. And but unfortunately, it is expected that further amendments will be released by the government over the next 12 months. We don't know what they will be about. But the unilateral introduction of the statement without consultation with councils and MEF is very, very disappointing.
Thank you,
I don't know what we
Councillor.
can do,
Time.
but yeah, we need to cooperate and
Thank you, Councillor.
extension of time, yeah, just a
Do
few
I have a
seconds.
mover?
I'll
Councillor
move an extension.
Stephen Mayne. And do I have a seconder? Councillor Tom Slightbody. All those in favour? Thank you, Councillor. That's carried unanimously. You've got 2 minutes, Councillor Chen.
So I support the recommendation that council will continue to work with MEF and Eastern Region groups of councils, of course, our fellow councils, and on planning reform matters. But not only that, I encourage all residents in Manningham to write to the state government, our MPs, to voice our concerns in response to the housing statement. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Do I have any other speakers for the Councillor Laura Mayne.
Thank you. I'd just like to briefly echo the sentiments of my fellow councillors. Although the state government may have the best intentions with this announcement, it really is not the solution in any capacity. We are the level of government who knows and cares about the local community the most. There really is no question about that. And I don't have the confidence that the state government shares this same passion and this same knowledge. We are the most invested. We know the most about the area, and most importantly, its neighbourhood character. We all, us councillors, we all live, work and play in this local area, and we are by far the level of government that is most in touch with the community. There's a lot of work that the state government could do with planning. I think our last motion about affordable housing, the lack of mandatory affordable inclusionary zoning proves that, and this simply is just not the solution at all. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Do I have any other councillors to speak to the motion? Councillor Goff.
Thank you very much, Mayor. And I wasn't going to speak, but I will get up and have a few words about this particular issue. You know, it really is a match has been lit and thrown into the bush, and it's all catching on fire, and everyone's exploding at the moment because. And then the person that threw the match in has retired or resigned. But the thing is, what this is aimed to do is to quickly fill metropolitan Melbourne with all spare land and redevelop houses and everything without due consideration of its long-term effects of the area or the facilities around the area, what it's going to look like and how everything's going to cope. It's really a mechanism to get quick planning decisions and things built quickly, and sometimes not to any great standard of anything. You know, in the last 30 years, the government has had this brand of government has had a long time to actually do a number of things. Do a number of things of what people were talking about with social housing and affordable housing for many years, but they've done nothing until very recently. Done absolutely nothing on this. And the question that people have to ask is from Richard Wynne to now, how many backlog planning applications have been sitting with the minister and haven't been resolved? The number would be in the hundreds, if not thousands. And you'd ask the next question, how many people could be accommodated by all of these things that have been just sitting around ministers' tables at the state government level? But before we get and say too much, I think we just got to console ourselves with the fact that the state government has always been in charge of planning. They have always been in charge because it is, we might call it the Manningham Planning Scheme, but it isn't the Manningham Planning Scheme unless the minister and the state government sign off on it. Then it becomes a plan. And the very fact is that local government isn't an independent level of government. It is a group of people that have been elected by the local community to make some decisions on behalf of the state government. That's our actual situation. So we may think that we do a great lot of things here, and we do, but the government has always been in. The effect that it's going to have on people is that people without coming anywhere or going anywhere are going to be able to build properties in our area without even coming to council. It will be approved, will be built, we will have no say in it, and we've got no ability to get involved in that situation. And the people in our community need to know that their loss will be their appeal rights, because there's no one to appeal to. At the moment, people appeal to the state
Councillor,
government through...
time.
Can I just have an extension, maybe?
Can I have a mover?
I won't be 2 minutes.
And Councillor Carly Lang, and a seconder, please. Councillor Michelle Kleinert. All those in favour? It's carried unanimously. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. You know, the appeal has been through VCAT. And VCAT is the state government's governing body to really look at whether a development should go ahead or not. And that people had a right to appeal. I'm not sure, and don't want to be quoted on this, but I don't think there's an avenue of appeal, or there certainly hasn't been explained an avenue of appeal for our community to actually formally go through objecting to anything that's being done. And in fact, it will be like the schools. You won't find out about it until it's done, because, you know, with school sites and everything else, the education minister is a planning person there, and it doesn't have to go out to public consultation. So we're now providing a lot of land, and all of our municipal land and everything is going to be available for. We don't know the extent that the state government are going to be doing it on. I'm sure they don't want to be doing it on everything, but they certainly will be wanting to do it over areas that they've nominated, like the fake station of Doncaster, which mightn't be built for another 60 years, but we will certainly get the development around it quite ahead of time, because that's within a 3 or 1.5 kilometre radius of where the site is located. And they've got them marked on maps, whether it's going to happen or not in the future, everywhere across Victoria and anywhere that they think is important where the growth could occur. So, Cal, it is something we need to get a lot more clarification on, and it is something that is absolutely amazing through the inability of a state government to pass things through its own planning department, saying that local councils have slowed things up. Yes, I believe that local councils are slow and could speed up, but not to the same extent that a lot of things have been sitting on ministers' desks. And it'd be very interesting to ask the question, how many planning applications or rezoning applications or whatever have been sitting on and unresolved on a minister's desk?
Thank you, Councillor Goff. Do I have any other councillors? Councillor Lang.
Thank you. I also wasn't going to speak, but as I'm listening to everybody and I've gone back to the report, I refer to page 10 where it talks about how we're helping, the housing reform documents say how we're helping Victorians build. And it has 4 categories. It says customer focus, strong regulators, skilled builders, and better approvals. But then it has contradictory information where it notes several changes to propose restrict third-party appeal rights. So it says to focus on the customer, but then it says to take the customer out. That doesn't work for me.
Thank you, Councillor Lang. I am also going to speak on this motion. So, councillors, I very much support this recommendation and I support writing to both the Premier and the Minister for Planning. As a council, we've been working hard to put Manningham's perspective in place, as well as that of our community, and we've been meeting with members of the government and the opposition planning minister, about this. And we're not anti-housing, and I think that's a really important point, councillors. We're not anti-housing. We've just approved our affordable housing policy. Some of you have mentioned our livable city strategy that talks about how we're going to develop and create housing opportunities. So we're absolutely not anti-housing, but we are very focused on the importance of the community voice. And in every meeting we have had with government representatives, we have been advocating for the community to continue to have a voice whenever permits come their way. So I would echo what the councillors have said here, for the members of the public to become familiar with these housing reform announcements if they're not already, and to write to your local member if you are also concerned. And certainly when we write to the Minister and the Premier, we will prioritise that community voice. So I'm going to put this motion. Oh, and Councillor Connor, would you like to close?
Yes.
Right.
Well, thank you, councillors. It's great to see that we are all on the same page here. So I don't know if I need to close, but I do think we probably can do more than what's actually in the report. And I think that we need to be aware of getting the public on side and making the public aware of what this actually means to their neighbourhoods, to their right to object, to all those things. And so I hope that we can actually, the officers will actually go further than this report and get community support behind advocacy, because councils are seen as whingers to the state government, but when they get actual people who are voting for the government or not, then that has a much bigger impact. So I hope we can coordinate a strong public advocacy campaign on this. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Conlon. I will now put it to a vote. All those in favour? And that's carried unanimously. Thank you, councillors. I'm going to move to item number 11, Connected Communities. 11.1, Tom Kelly Athletics Track Usage Plan. Do I have a mover? Councillor Anna Chen.
Thank you, Mayor. I move that the recommendation be adopted.
Thank you, Councillor Chen. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Goff. Councillor Chen, would you like to speak to the motion?
Thank you, Mayor. And Tom Kelly Athletic was built in 1972 and is a regional level facility that caters for regional and state level competition. It is one of the very few athletic track open to the public all time. The latest management plan was developed in 2012. At that time, local residents submitted minimal feedback regarding the track. But over the past 10 years, the usage of the facility has changed. The tenant clubs are booking for longer hours, normally use the prime time from 7:30, now up until 9:30. And more events are being hosted by the sporting associations and schools. The increased population in our municipality also demonstrates strong interest in using the facility. In the meantime, there are increasing complaints from residents regarding noises, parking issues, and traffic congestion. It is council's utmost responsibility to find a balance between the different needs to achieve optimal use of the facility and minimize the adverse impact to the residents. With that in mind, Council had conducted extensive consultations. This time, the community interest of this consultation process is phenomenal. An usage plan was developed with 30 recommendations on areas of usage, management, facilities, and maintenance. These recommendations are prioritized from high, medium to low. They capture feedback from a wide range of users and aligned with council plan strategies to improve community access, minimize impact of the use on neighboring properties, and to optimize use with the focus of it being a community facility for the community. So I just, by way of example, just to show our councillors regarding the recommendations. For example, recommendation 2, work with athletics clubs on implementing shared use agreements with an aim of increasing community access during times when the track is used by clubs. This recommendation provides flexibility. The key terms of this recommendation is to work with clubs, in implementing the shared use arrangement. If we look at the dictionary, sorry, the lawyer's habit die hard. Look at the dictionary. So to work with someone means try very hard in order to achieve something. No doubt clubs will provide valuable insight from their perspective. Our officers need to be entrusted with flexibility and the ability to achieve optimal outcome. Of course, on an operational level, as usual, when we go out to consult, to engage, there's always a guidelines, a framework in place for officers to guide the discussion. And another example is recommendation 6. Recommendation 6 consider limiting the number of evening events outside each of the tenants' clubs' seasonal calendar to reduce the number of peak body events. There are no more than one additional event in the evening or on Sunday in the same week in order to minimize impacts on local residents. These requirements may be waived by negotiation with council when end-of-season championships may be hosted in the same week, for example. So this recommendation responds directly to residents' concern about noise. The idea was to create a balance between excessive use impacting residents and allowing enough use to meet clubs' needs first and foremost. It is designed to limit the numbers of events that are run by groups outside Manningham, such as state sporting associations, and will priority Manningham's clubs and groups use. It provides officers policy background and strengthens council's position in limiting the number of evening use by the peak bodies outside Manningham.
Councillor, time.
Yes.
You move.
Thank you.
So I have a mover, Councillor Goff. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Lang. All those in favour? Thank you, councillors. That's carried. You have 2 minutes, Councillor Chen.
Thank you. Another good example is installing the stretching stations and outdoor gym equipment for use of the community. This is not another way just to increase the use of community by the community for the community, and that provide flexibility for officers to install whatever equipment they think suitable for their location. So I support those recommendations wholeheartedly. And it is also important to note that the key focus of the usage plan is about gaining additional access to the athletic track for the general community. It will also have a particular benefit for females, as the athletic track provides a facility to participate in activities such as walking because it is perceived as safe through the provision of lighting, and user group activities are being run. To address the club's concern, many recommendations are operational, and council has allocated around $10,000 to design of the pavilion upgrades and followed by $1 million in 2024 and 25 financial year for delivery. So it is a product of extensive feedback from the community, including the residents, stakeholders, groups, and tenant clubs. So I wholeheartedly ask my fellow councillors to consider those feedback and accept the recommendations from the officers. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Chen. Councillor Goff, would you like to speak to the motion?
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and just quickly reiterating a number of the things, but most importantly, this report and this motion is about 30 actions that are going to be taken to look at the track and to put in and work with the users of the track. But this report hasn't come out of nothing. It's come out of quite a deal of work by council and discussions with the community. Not just the users and the clubs at the track, but also with schools that actually on occasions do use the track. It's also there with the whole community, the wider community of Manningham have had input into this, as well as I suppose the local residents around it that will have had input into this particular thing. And really it talks about its use and functions and the ways in which we can improve its use and function and what's needed to make it a better site. And basically this is a plan ahead to go and do that. So I recommend that we get on with the plan ahead to go and do it.
Thank you, Councillor Goff. Do I have any speakers against the motion? So, councillors, I am going to move an amendment to the motion. And I've drafted an amendment. I'll ask the amendment to... Well, I was going to read the amendment first. So I move that council endorses the Tom Kelly Athletics Track Usage Plan with the following amendments to Section 11 recommendations. Recommendation 2 is amended to read, work with the Athletics Club on implementing shared use arrangements through an agreed framework which considers safety and other impacts with the aim of increasing community access when the track is used by clubs for low impact training or informal activity. B, recommendation 6 is amended to read, consider the impact on surrounding residents of special event usage of the track and only if necessary limit the number of evening events outside of each tenant club's seasonal calendar to reduce the number of peak body events. C, recommendation 7 is amended to read, to minimise impact to local residents, actively manage user groups and hirers so that the lights in the PA system cease at 9:30 p.m. Usage beyond the restricted hours for events and other purposes will be considered on a case-by-case basis, with criteria for this included in Council's sporting infrastructure policy. And D, recommendation 24 be amended to note that installation of stretching stations to support fitness associated with athletics to be available for club and community users. Councillors, I would like Councillor Lightbody as Deputy Mayor to assume the chair to allow me to enter the debate by moving an amendment for the motion. Are you okay with that, Councillor Lightbody?
Yes, Madam Mayor, I can assume the role of chairperson for this item.
So, councillors, if you just let us change positions, we'll just pause briefly.
Okay. I will now ask the mover and seconder of the motion if they would be open to including that amendment in their motion. No? The seconder?
The mover's not on it, it won't happen.
All right. So, Councillor Diamante, would you like to move your amendment?
Yes, so I move that the amendment as read out is adopted.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Diamante. Councillors, do I have a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Kleinert. Councillor Diamante, would you like to speak to the amendment?
Yes. Thank you, Chair. So Councillor Chen provided us a really great summary of the history of this track, which has been around for 51 years. And this track has been a great part of the athletics environment for 51 years. And I would like to note that the track has probably been there before some of our residents have moved there as well. Councillor Chen's also noted the investment that council has put into this track, and council has invested a lot of money into this track, in the maintenance of the track, in the surfacing of the track, in the lighting infrastructure. We now have plans to further upgrade the seating of the track, the car park, the toilets. So it's one of our preeminent tracks around the state. It's well known and it's well used. And I hold a very firm view that this track should be used as an athletics track for athletics clubs, for little athletics, for the senior athletics, for the running groups. And I don't think that they should apologise for being able to use the track for their events. So I don't support that we optimise this track as a community facility. I very much am putting to you, councillors, that we optimise this track as a sporting facility. So my amendments are looking at a common ground where the community can access the track, but ultimately the clubs are still able to train without having the community there. And I ask you all, councillors, whoever has gone onto the Doncaster Bowls green while they're playing and interrupted, that's a community facility. Who's gone into Mullumbullen Station when basketball teams are training and started to bounce around the ball? That's a community facility. I'm slightly bemused why, when we have runners running around that track, and some of them are going very fast, and we all know that velocity will increase impact if there's impacts. I am slightly bemused why we're looking at how they can share the track with the community, hence my recommendation to be amended number 2 to look at that shared access only when the clubs have low impact training or informal activity. I also note the words around training because we do have a lot of youth that are using that track, and we do have a duty of care that those youth are kept safe. For my amendments to recommendation number 6, again, we have invested a lot of money in this track, and this track is very well known. It's one of the preeminent tracks around. I think we actually owe an obligation to get the best value for money out of this track by having people use it. So I would really like to have the amendment where we're not just limiting the number of evening events, but we're doing it as an exception. Obviously, we will be always respectful of the residents' needs. My recommendation number 7, my amendment, is not always to have a black and white that the lights turn out at 9:30. We've all been to events, councils, at that track, for example, Relay for Life, where the lights are on well past 9:30. And I think we need to have a little bit of pragmatism about what are the criteria for them to be used. And finally, my background for amendment to recommendation number 24, we have just spent quite a lot of money in putting equipment, fitness equipment, into Ruffy Lake Park, and it's wonderful, including the Ninja circuit. It doesn't sit comfortably with me that we're going to duplicate that equipment, so I have nominated that as a compromise we install stretching stations that can be used by the community, but as well as the athletics track. So that is the background for my amendment.
Thank you. Councillor Kleinert, would you like to speak to the amendment?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think when you look at these are just minor amendments, and I think as Councillor De Monte stated, when it is a community asset, but when someone's using it like a football ground, the footballers are using it, the cricket clubs are using it, basketball, netball, the list goes on, bowling. I think if we keep to that sort of principle, then it becomes a lot clearer. It's still a community asset, and I think now these are just minor tweaks. I don't have issues with the minor tweaks. I think it's taking into consideration that, you know, there are clubs that utilise it. They do pay rent. They service, it's not, you know, they're servicing sport and community and mental health and all those things. When you start to water it down and say you have a different rule to every other sporting club in Manningham, that's where I look and think, okay, these amendments sit well. So I don't see them as any standouts. I don't see them as any shockers. Item number D, I think it's great. It brings variety. Stretching station, it's different to what's in Ruffy Park, and it will bring people to utilise the whole area and make people move more. So I see this as slight. It's not going to break the camel's back, and I think they're just nice little tweaks that do show that for clubs. And it's a unique thing because it's not like in a sporting ground where you've got a club utilising it while, you know, they're big and they've got, you know, the amount of children playing, and when they go down in size another club takes over. You know, we don't have multiple athletics clubs. We have multiple different users at different times, and I think it just really empowers them and shows some give and take. True what's said with regards to some little tweaks on the PA system and the ceasing at 9:30 p.m. I think even, lots of locals go to the Relay for Life. They enjoy that, and they understand that that's doing something greater than them. But this takes into consideration that we find that balance, which I think's very good. So I just hope that you'll endorse tonight with these tweaks. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And councillors, do we have... Councillors, do we have any speakers against the amendment? Councillor Chen.
And as my fellow councillor duly said, that there is an investment from council. The investment, the money was from ratepayers. So ratepayers pay for the investment, and as a result, we have the ability and responsibility to offer the shared use to our community. And I heard councillors from time to time compare that there is a sporting facilities. How come the sporting club can use it by their own and not the athletic track? They should be treated as the same. But if we look at the nature of the sports, you can't compare football or soccer with athletics. Athletic track has 8 lanes, and use of common modern technology and a lot of the experience can clearly differentiate the club's use and the community use. And the first recommendation, which I have already mentioned about before, that we need to provide flexibility and the abilities for officers to work with the clubs, so to achieve the best outcome for both the community and the clubs. So I really against putting a lot of nitty-gritty in there and just to restrict the officers' ability to negotiate. And I also strongly against the agreed framework, because there's already operational procedure in place. There is nothing that can be agreed on. I mean, that just again further restrict the abilities for officers to negotiate. And regarding the gyms, outdoor gyms and stretching facilities, the officers really need the flexibility. And Ruffy Lake Park and the track separated by Victoria Street. And I walked there on Sunday. That take me whole 12 minutes to walk there. And I think that as a facility, we should cater the most use by our community. And the recommendation 7, I mean, I went to the Relay for Life. I stayed at the end of the session, and they finish well slightly after 9:30. That is without any guidance from council. So I do think that with the time restriction in place, everyone can abide to the requirements imposed by council. And recommendation 6, and I think that the council, we should...
Thank you, Council. That's time.
And I ask for extension because it is really important.
Yep. Councillor Kyle-Lang, do
I move an extension of time,
I have a seconder?
Mr Mayor.
Michelle?
Yes.
And just before we
Check.
start again, okay, we'll put the extension to the vote. That's carried. And just before we start again, I've just been notified that the Facebook feed has dropped out again. However, governance is not recommending to pause the meeting as we should have audio backup. But you may continue, Councillor Chen.
So recommendation 6, we have to give also some guidance about how they implement this recommendation. And the main purpose is to limit some of the numbers of the peak bodies evening events to preserve local amenity. So with the numbers in place, we can give officers some guidance in negotiating and implementing the limitation of the events. So it also aligns with a lot of council's plans and strategies, because our council plan encourage us to deliver initiative to promote equality access across gender, age, diversity, and ability and culture. And our very new Active for Life recreation strategy, they set some priorities. Priority area 1 is to provide flexible, multi-use, durable spaces for recreation to meet the needs of the growing community. So the priority area 2 is to collaborate with key partners and stakeholders. We won't just go out and do it ourselves. So it all go back to the recommendations, to work with the clubs. So actually the flexibility is so important, and officers, we have to entrust our officers, our trust and their ability to negotiate for the better outcome for the community and the clubs as all. And priority area 3 is to foster the environment of inclusion. So I urge councillors, and we have to look into a line of our council plan and our relevant related strategies to implement the recommendations. It goes out from nowhere. It comes out as an extensive
Thank you, Councillor.
from the community. Thank you.
Do we have any other speakers for the amendment? Councillor Lang.
Thank you. Councillors, the Tom Kelly Athletics Track Plan came to the Recreation and Sport Committee. And one of the things that was said by the committee, from people of all different sports and recreational uses within Manningham, and not from people from clubs, but they all said that this was a beneficial asset, that they wanted to increase community use, but they talked about not necessarily doing it while there's the clubs there, but when the clubs have cancelled and then the booking is still booked out but it's not being used. And they gave me about 4 different examples of where they talked about, we went down there, it's booked out on the website, but there was no one there using it. So their request was to have a more up-to-date, newer technology tracking usage system, which is, I'll highlight in recommendation 5, to actually reflect the usage by the clubs and then for it to be more available. So we have many community assets within Manningham, which we have all contributed to as ratepayers and all the community do. But when a club uses it, it's still for the community because those club members are from our community. We also have an obligation of safety. Parents drop their children off to their sports clubs, to their athletics track, knowing that they're going to be safe to use the toilets, safe to be around the track, because you can't expect people who run these sports groups to be monitoring them 24/7. So you don't expect other people to be there while your kids are training. So
Thank you, Councillor. Oh, sorry. One more minute.
I think these amendments are actually just making our intentions clearer, our obligations and our safety clearer, not taking away that this is a facility for the community, and we need to find a balance on how to use it for our community. In a club, out of club, for an activity of running, for an activity of walking, or for stretching. It is for everybody, and we need to find a right way to manage it. And I have the timetable up in front of me, and when we can make that more live and more active, we increase community use. That's what people were asking for.
Thank you, Councillor. Any speakers against the amendment? Councillor Mayne. Oh, any other speakers for the amendment? I'll go to Councillor Mayne first. For any other speakers? It was. Yeah.
Well, thank you, Acting Mayor. So I've gone into this discussion with an open mind. I was toying with the idea of a deferral for another month to further consult, but I have to say, after listening to the debate, I actually think we should support the amendment. I think, as Councillor Klein had said, these are sensible, relatively minor, not particularly controversial amendments. They're well researched in consultation with the officers, and I think it does send a message to the community that we are, as a council, strongly supportive of organised sport. And it's not all just about informal recreation. That when clubs run by volunteers put their time in for free to council to help our kids, and in organised structured sport, that their council will give them access and time to utilise the facilities, that we won't take a needlessly sort of Manningham-centric position when we've got a great regional facility that's one of the top 6 tracks in the state, and then we suddenly say we don't want non-Manningham bookings. And when I went down there, and there was a whole bunch of Burundara schools there the other week, and it was fantastic to see 500 people from Burundara using the facility, admiring the excellent facilities that council has. The residents have been there since 1972. There's possibly 5 who back onto the track directly in Yallaroo Court and Dundas Court. If you add George Street and Barrabool Street, you might get 20 houses. You've got thousands of people using this facility. We don't close Aquarina early because a couple of neighbours complain about it. So let's be proud of this facility. Let's support our sporting clubs that use it. Let's liberate the people to access it and not put them in straitjackets and say you can't use it if you're from here, or you've got to shut up early if you do this. These amendments are sensible, well-researched, and I think send a really important messages to our officers and to the community and to our clubs that we really want to make their life as easy as possible to put on well-organised, volunteer-run, structured, healthy sport.
Thank you. Any speakers against the motion? Councillor Conlon.
Thank you. I have concerns about the current report and the amendment, and I'd much prefer a deferral. But part of the problem is the amendments are, in some cases, being too specific, I believe, and effectively remove, I guess, put the power back into clubs who potentially can abuse that power and tie up the track again. For example, as Councillor Lang mentioned, about the clubs will inform when they are not using the track. My reading of the amendment in recommendation 2 is that with the aim of increasing access when the track is used by clubs for low impact training or informal activity, that's very broad, and I suspect the club would be able to say, look, we've got the best sprinter in Australia, one person training on the track on Thursday nights, every single Thursday night from 7 till 9, and we want to tie up the track. There's too much. I think we're losing the idea of goodwill here. We're losing the idea of the ability of our, I guess, confidence in our officers to actually negotiate on the basis of goodwill to get a good outcome for the community. So I can foreshadow changing the amendment, but I won't be supporting it as it is. I believe recommendation 2 should just read simply concern that potentially this will, that we reduce the that we have to make it more open-ended so that it's assumption of good faith and that people won't abuse that. Recommendation 6, I don't think that we should be specifying up to the point where it says, and only if necessary limit the number of evening events outside each I guess to me we should keep it as a very simple thing and say consider the impact on surrounding residents of the special event usage of the track, and if necessary limit the number of evening events if necessary. Like we can make this much more flexible for the officers, put the power in the officers and let it come back to us to, if it comes down to a dispute between clubs and officers about what's appropriate, about are powers being, is the power that we're going to give to the club, because I notice in recommendation 2 we're saying use arrangements through an agreed framework. Well, if I was the club and I wanted to keep my existing rights, I'd just say, well, I'm never going to agree with that. That's effectively what we're saying here. If they never agree, we've got a council motion saying, well, you said you would agree to it.
Thank you, Council. That's time.
I'd ask for an extension.
Anyone want to move the extension? Councillor Lang?
I move the extension be granted, Chair.
And a seconder? Councillor Main, Laura Main.
So we haven't voted.
Oh, sorry. Can we vote on that?
Thanks, Chair. Oh, sorry.
Can I raise a point of order, please, Chair?
Yep.
So I think what Councillor Conlon said was slightly misleading, because in recommendation, the one you talked about, an agreed framework, that was recommendation 2, that was already in the report that came from the officers in their recommendation.
Councillor, can I ask you to clarify which of the documents?
My point of order is misleading. Sorry, I said that, but I didn't give you a chance to rule on it. My apologies. So my point of order is misleading because Councillor Conlon was talking about wording in recommendation 2 that were actually already in the officer's report. So they weren't words that I changed in the amendment.
Can I read? Could I read for you recommendation 2 as it's in the report?
Yeah, but that's fine. You just need to make a decision.
Okay, I'll uphold that point of order.
I will read for you. Sorry.
Councillor Conlon, you have your 2 minutes to continue talking from your extension. You've got your 2 minutes extension.
I've got my 2 minutes extension, but you've agreed with a point of order. I'll read recommendation 2, so we're really clear. This is as it's written in the report. Work with the athletics clubs on implementing shared use arrangements with the aim of increasing community access during times when the track is used by clubs. It says work with the athletics clubs. It doesn't talk about an agreed framework. You've just upheld a point of order, which is not correct. But anyway, I'd rather not go into these games. I don't believe we have a workable. I don't think these are workable. I will repeat. They give way too much power to people who can then abuse it, and we don't have anything to go back on. We should be negotiating in good faith, and we should go back to either defer it or go back to the original thing. And just if we are going to go ahead, I'd like to ask for an amendment to the amendment, which I assume what's the process for that? Okay, well, I think, for example, the reference to the criteria, if you could just drop that with the criteria to be included in council supporting infrastructure policy. I think it should be just on a case-by-case basis.
We'll come back to that.
Yep. Are there any other speakers for the motion?
Yes, I'd like to.
Councillor Laura Main.
I'm speaking for this amendment. The key consideration that really persuaded me to be more club orientated, because I wasn't originally, was that I like the idea that clubs can maybe choose to be generous if they want. Say someone starts comes out and starts using the track and is being harmless, they can continue the way they are. It might be a bit awkward to tell them off, and they can choose not to. But I like that you allow clubs to have that power and something that can back them, that they can go and ask someone to not use the facility for a lot of the reasons that were listed, like child safety and them wanting to excel in their sport, etc. So I think when this strategy actually plays out, the reality is people don't want to kick off someone using the track who's being very harmless, but it's nice that they have the option to do so. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other speakers against the motion? Any other speakers for the motion? In that case, I will put the amendment to a vote. Those in favour? Councillors Diamante, Councillors Kleinert, Councillor Lang, Councillor S. Main, Councillor L. Main, Councillor Goff and Councillor Lightbody. Those against? Councillor Conlon and Councillor Chen. The amendment now becomes the substantive motion. Councillor Diamante, would you like to speak to the substantive motion? No. Councillor Kleinert, would you like to speak to the substantive motion? No. Councillors, do we have any speakers against the motion? No. Do we have any other speakers for the motion? Okay. Councillor Diamante, would you like to close?
No, thank you, Chair.
No, this is now the substantive motion. That's become the substantive motion. Sorry, it's become the substantive motion now. So it's not an amendment anymore. So you do have the right.
So I will close. I thank my councillors for supporting the amendment. I think that we have to remember that clubs have their allocation. So clubs will have their allocation. This is not changing their allocation. There are many recommendations in the report that I thought were very, very good, like the live booking system. And so, for example, the allocations will go into the live booking system. So people will know when it is and is not used. It's not that none of these amendments are there for any club to try and create a better outcome for themselves. Those allocations will be there, as will the allocations, though, for some of the more informal activity or the low impact activity, which people will then know they can use the clubs. And there's also really good recommendations in there around being able to use the track all the time on Fridays and Saturdays, other than for maybe up to 10 occurrences during the year. So I do, and absolutely support what you've all been saying, that the officers are very well placed to take these amendments and to work with the clubs to get the best outcome. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. I'll put that to a vote. All those in favour? Councillor Lightbody, Councillor Diamante, Councillor Kleinert, Councillor Lang, Councillor S. Main, Councillor L. Main, Councillor Goff. Those against? Councillor Chen and Councillor Conlon. Councillor Diamante, would you like to assume the chair for the remainder of the meeting?
Thank you very much, Councillor Lightbody. Thank you, Councillor Lightbody. Councillors, before we start, we're just checking our Facebook connection. Thank you, Thomas, for chairing a very difficult meeting item.
So Facebook is still not working. So I think we'll just recommend we continue to push on. We've got the audio and we'll put that on the website. You okay with that?
Yeah. So we keep our mics on. So, councillors, the Facebook stream is still not working, but we will continue the meeting, and if we can continue to have our microphones on so we can capture the audio. So I'm going to move to item number 12, City Services, and there are no City Services reports. Item number 13, Experience and Capability. 13.1, Annual Report 2022 and 23. Do I have a mover?
That the recommendation be adopted, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Lang, do I have a seconder?
I second the motion.
Thank you, Councillor Laura Main. Councillor Lang, would you like to speak to the motion?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Look, the annual report is about council's performance, and it is over the period of a year, so from 2022 to 2023. There are a few things in this council report, the annual report, that is a bit different because the council have all, from 2012, have made a decision to disclose remuneration information of the 5 highest remunerated officers in our annual report. However, a recent amendment to the Fair Work Act has created the right for the employees to disclose or choose not to disclose this remuneration information. So to balance the rights of employees and the commitment to our community to be transparent, we have updated this section of the report and tabled it as the senior officers who are remunerated, but also in brackets of 10,000 intervals in like salary brackets, so that we're not going against the Fair Work Act and an employee's right to disclose. So I just make that as an amendment to what we would normally see in our annual reports. Make note of that as a change. The annual report also looks at our performance statement. It also looks at our financial statement for the year, and it also includes the Victorian Auditor General Officer's certificates and assessment. And I'm pleased to actually say the annual report is actually very community friendly as well. If you noticed, it's broken up into our council plan themes. It has really clear objectives, measures, indicators and results. And it also gives you a rundown of like all the important or key activities in the area with few highlights, but also challenges, so people know that it's actually quite difficult to do all these things. We actually show that we do really well because we work with these challenges to deliver for our community. So there are lots of highlights. There's the new technology tree plotter system, where we are making our processes more resilient, and we're looking for resilience in our environment. There was fabulous engagement with under our Vibrous and Prosperous economy, where we did 30 faves in 30 days, where you could find a different place in Manningham to go to each day and go visit it. And, you know, it was part of advertising for our community local businesses. We went solar in our livable places and spaces. We have advanced reconciliation. We have let our young people take a lead through the Manningham Youth Advisory Committee. We've had a comprehensive rollout of FOGO, and we've been able to do 45 million capital works program. And if you actually look at the table friendly, and I have the pictures here to show you, if you have a look at all the things we've achieved in this 2022 to 23 year, we should be very proud, because these are all massive goals, services, objectives and resources for our community's benefit. And I would encourage the community to look at our annual report, and I encourage you as councillors to compliment our officers for our annual report. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Lang. Councillor Laura Mayne, would you like to speak to the
Yes, thank you,
motion?
Mayor. I think Councillor Lang summed it up quite well, so I'll be brief. But I think at the forefront, I would love to thank the work of our officers for putting together this substantial report. It's so nice to see an outline of what we've accomplished this year and how we are continuing to deliver great services and support to our community. Some of the key initiatives that weren't already covered by Councillor Lang in summary is our delivery of over 1.1 million in community grants awarded to over 90 organisations. We adopted the Livable City strategy. We made the difficult decision to move away from our aged care service. And we delivered upgrades across Manningham, whether that's sport, footpaths, roads and more, all taking into account and despite the supply and labour shortages which are across the construction sector. So overall, I hope members of our organisation, when they read this report, are proud of our accomplishments and that this put us in good stead moving forward into the last year of this council term. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Mayne. Do I have any speakers against the motion? Councillor Stephen Mayne.
I know it sounds ridiculous to vote against the annual report, so I'll have to explain myself here. So I'm just signalling my personal reservations about rescinding the May 29, 2012 motion, which I put up, to move to disclosure of the top 5 executives' salaries and contract details, modelling the ASX situation, which was the argument run back then. The system's run perfectly well for 11 years. Senior officers who've come to Manningham have known the system. City of Melbourne also adopted the system. City of Melbourne will be continuing with the system this year after some internal debate. And I acknowledge that no other Victorian councils do that, and I acknowledge the legal advice after the changes to the Fair Work Act that do elevate employee privacy on these issues. As Councillor Diamante noted earlier, I've long had a keen interest in transparency. This obviously will be a slight step backwards in transparency. I can't bring myself to vote for it, but I understand the reasons for it. I'm a huge admiration for our senior officers. In no way am I criticising their talent and endeavour and integrity in taking this position. I just personally feel it's a little conservative. I can't imagine the Fair Work coppers taking us to court over this issue. But we have legal advice, and I'm not going to try and round up numbers to overturn legal advice. So the annual report is great. Fully support that, but just for the reasons explained, I probably would have preferred that this decision could have been unbundled, maybe taken earlier in the year, but obviously the timing didn't work out that way. It's a package deal, and hence I'm voting against, but I'm not hoping that this goes down.
Thank you, Councillor Stephen Mayne. Do I have other speakers for the motion? Councillor Kleinert.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Firstly, I'd like to commend the organisation and those involved in the annual report. It's an excellent annual report. It's nice and easy to read, and when people say, where do my rates go? It really highlights through the themes where some of that goes. And that's like 751 kilometres of road, 918 kilometres of footpaths, 64.7 kilometres of off-road footpaths, not footpaths, but pathways, and 118 pedestrian paths in parks. We have 351 parks and reserves. We have a whole amount of playgrounds that sit within those parks and reserves. 80% of our population have their home business at home. 20% of our population live by themselves, yet 74% feel connected in Manningham. It's a wonderful report. It shows that we are doing some great things, and we're doing them every single day as we provide over 100 services from cradle to grave to our residents. So it's a great report. I'm proud of the report, and we should be, because we work hard to deliver, to make people feel valued, and certainly preempting in my council report how that's demonstrated in that very, very noting. So it's a really great report. And when people do wonder where does your money, where does their money go, it is a really good read, especially to each of the themes in easy English, and which makes you really understand who and what we are, and a snapshot of our community, which I think is great. So congratulations to the organisation on a stellar report, and trust that it will be unanimously endorsed, as it's a very important document. It's our annual report.
Thank you, Councillor Kleinert. Very well expressed all of the achievements of council. Do I have any other speakers against the motion? Any other speakers for the motion?
Do I get an opportunity to close, Madam Mayor?
As the mover, yes, you do. I just want to ask the councillors, is there anyone else that would like to speak to the motion, councillors? Councillor Lang, you may close.
Thank you. The one bit that I didn't mention, and that wasn't mentioned by my fellow councillors, otherwise I wouldn't have taken this opportunity, councillors, is actually that the annual report also does a snapshot of the year ahead. And the outcomes in the year ahead are broken up into our council plan. So not only are we getting a report on what's been done, we're actually getting a forecast of what we're aiming to do in our next year. And that is under Healthy Community, where we're looking at our services to address mental health and isolation, which we know is very important within our community. It's looking at partnership with our volunteer groups, libraries and neighbourhood houses. It's looking for education and awareness. This is all under a Healthy Community. Under our council plan heading of livable places, it's looking for new responsible development, ways to connect our community, providing infrastructure and also better utilisation of our facilities. And under resilience community, it's got core principles of biodiversity and protecting our wildlife. Under being well governed, it looks at initiatives to support awareness of our council programs and measures to demonstrate the success of our services, which we know is very important because we want high quality customer service. And under vibrant and prosperous economy, it's looking at supporting our local businesses. Now, if that's the year ahead, what a wonderful year ahead it is.
Thank you, Councillor. I'll put this to a vote. All those in favour? Councillor Anna Chen, Councillor Andrew Conlon, Councillor Laura Main, Councillor Jeff Goff, Councillor Deirdre Diamanti, Councillor Thomas Lightbody, Councillor Michelle Klein, Councillor Carly Lang. Those against? Councillor Stephen Main, and that is carried. Item number 14, Chief Executive Officer. 14.1, Council meeting schedule for 2024. Do I have a mover? Councillor Conlon?
So I move that the recommendation be adopted.
Thank you, Councillor. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Thomas Lightbody. Councillor Conlon, would you like to speak to the motion? Councillor Lightbody? Do I have any speakers against the motion? Any other speakers for the motion? We'll put that to a vote. All those in favour? It's carried unanimously. Thank you, councillors. Item number 14.2, informal meetings of councillors. Do I have a mover?
I move that's on the paper, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Goff. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Stephen Main. Councillor Goff, would you like to speak to the motion?
No, Madam Mayor.
Councillor Stephen Main?
Just briefly, Madam Mayor, I'd love to see the state government's equivalent of this report for their planning reforms. I mean, councils are incredibly transparent. This report details 9 meetings, which were deemed informal meetings of councillors. It says when it happened, what was on the agenda, who attended, how long it went for, and whether there were any apologies in the items that were discussed. It's incredibly transparent. Love to have seen the equivalent from the state government. And the only meeting I'll probably draw the community's attention to is the September 27 meeting of it was called the North East Link Briefing to Council Urban Design Landscape Plan, and the item discussed, summarised, was that the North East Link Project Urban Design Landscape Plan for the Southern Package, which is the Eastern Freeway Works, pre-exhibition councillor briefing of the UDLP details. And this was a very interesting meeting. So for 2 hours, we had probably 20 to 25 people in the room, and we were very thoroughly briefed on all the aspects of the next phases, which is the Eastern Freeway works. So, and we had all the brass there from the North East Link, and it was a very good meeting to inform the councillors and the officers about what is happening with this massive $16.5 million project.
Thank you, Councillor Stephen Main. I will put that to a vote. All those in favour? And that's carried unanimously. Thank you, councillors. Item number 14.3, documents for sealing. Do I have a mover? Councillor Thomas Lightbody.
I move that the recommendation be adopted with the addition of the following agreement. Infrastructure licence, Council and the Minister for Environment and Parks Victoria. Location, Birrong Park, Yarra Valley Parklands.
Thank you, councillor. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Carly Lang. Thank you. Councillor Lightbody, would you like to speak to the motion? Councillor Carly Lang. Do I have any speakers to the motion? I will put that to a vote. All those in favour? And it's carried unanimously. Thank you, councillors. Item number 15, notices of motion. 15.1, notice of motion by Councillor Stephen Main. notice of motion number 3/2023. Do I have a mover?
So moved.
Thank you, Councillor Stephen Mayne. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Andrew Conlon. Councillor Mayne, would you like to speak to the motion?
Thank you, Mayor. So I'll just briefly explain this. This motion, I'll read it out maybe, is requests officers prepare a report for council meeting before the 2024 council election, which briefly summarises Manicare's stewardship and operations over the balance of the current council term, including how it was impacted by and met the challenges of the COVID-19 pandemic. Summarises the current legal, leasehold and commercial arrangements between Manicare Council, the state government and the federal government, and after consulting with Manicare, recommends any changes to the current arrangements between Manicare and council. So, councillors, not many people realise that the council is actually in the aged care, resi aged care business. We have a lease with Manicare, which back in the day was an entity that we effectively funded and set up and used to have 6 of the 12 board seats on. But the current lease with Manicare ends in 2032 when it comes back to council. So under the current lease terms, it comes back to council in 2032, and we are directly in the operations of a big resi care facility, which does a great job. As you know, councillors, I think we take around about $700,000 a year in lease payments from Manicare. They have close to $30 million in residential bonds. They offer a range of services. They've taken over some of the aged care services that we are exiting at the moment. They are a large and important institution in council, operating on circa $11 million worth of council land. We did have a briefing from their former chair, David Micklejohn, a very respected business figure. Used to be the chairman of the Melbourne Cricket Club, the chairman of the Audit Committee of the ANZ Bank, chairman of the Audit Committee of Coco Amatil, probably the biggest corporate guy in Manningham. And he did brief councillors and request a couple of tweaks to the arrangements a couple of years ago. We've had some internal briefings on that. And all this motion does is request that a report comes to council sometime in the next 12 months, which summarises the issues. And it is very challenging being in residential care. Is $700,000 a year too much? They've just had a loss of over $1 million in the last year. How are they going? We care for them. Is there anything we can do to help? What are the arrangements? Are there any big structural issues we need to deal with? At the timing of the officers, sometime in the next 12 months, we do get a report, because so far over the first 3 years of this term, we haven't had anything come to this table on this very large and important council-created initially institution. And I do think, as the ward councillor and a former director of Manicare back in the day when council was directly appointing councillors to the board, including Councillor Goff back in the day, that we just bring it in a little bit to have some more proximity to the councils, as opposed to the very distant and sometimes invisible way I feel that sometimes it is treated as a sort of a outsourced, we're not in the business, it's over there operation. I do think that given the history and the scale of the operations and the importance, that it does deserve to come to this table at least once in a 4-year council term. And if we support this motion tonight, councillors, that is what will happen sometime in the next 12 months.
Thank you, Councillor Stephen Mayne. Councillor Conn, would you like to speak to the motion? Do I have any speakers against the motion? Any other speakers to the motion? Then I will put this notice of motion to a vote. All those in favour? And that is carried unanimously. Thank you, councillors. Item number 16, urgent business, and there are no items of urgent business. Item number 17, councillor reports and question time. So, councillors, I'm going to lead off with 2 very important points to note. The first one is last Saturday, myself, Councillor Carly Lang and Andrew Day travelled to the Hunter Valley for the memorial service of those affected by the Hunter Valley bus tragedy. It was a very beautiful and very respectful service in memory of the 10 people that died, most of them very young people, including Darcy Borman. I wrote to Premier Chris Minns after the event to offer my congratulations on holding such a respectful service, and speaking to members of the Warrandyte community that also travelled up there. They found it a really beneficial, if not difficult, but beneficial step in their journey as well as they start to recover from this tragedy. So I would like to again publicly thank the New South Wales Government for putting on this memorial service. Change of tact, I also want to acknowledge Manningham Council for its fabulous initiative Lead to Sustain. And myself and some of our other councillors were at Currawong Bush Park for Lead to Sustain last week. It was a beautiful day. The sun was shining. I understand 14 of our 25 primary schools had representatives, and three of our 7 secondary schools were there as well, totaling 330 students, all sustainability captains or environmental warriors. And it was just wonderful to have so many activities posted. We had the Wurundjeri Woiwurrung Corporation there. We went on a walkabout with them as well to learn about First Nations culture. So it was a tremendous event. I would like to congratulate Council, and I hope this program continues and thrives because it's very much needed by the community. I will now ask my councillors, would anyone like to provide? Councillor Kleinert, the hands just go up. I love it. Councillor Kleinert.
Wowza. So my two are, first of all, Madam Mayor, this is your last council meeting. Deputy Mayor, your last council meeting. So thank you for the year that has been, acknowledging that this is your last one for the council. For your term as Mayor, for this term. Oh, that's right. But with the appointment of the new Mayor being this coming Thursday night here in this very room, 7 p.m, which is live streamed, just letting you know. The second one that I'd like to highlight is we just endorsed the annual report, which on page 27 talks about, in a snapshot, that 74% feel part of the community in Manningham. And it really showed today with Halloween. It was wonderful to be Tunstall Square has put it on for many years, and I've gone there, and they always do a great job. And it's wonderful to see that Jackson Court had their inaugural Halloween spooktacular, of which one of the committee members of the newly formed Jackson Court Traders Committee, sent via text, and it says to Councillor, and also officer, which they've named, which is Andy, for coming to our Halloween spooktacular. We had an amazing turnout. Everyone was dressed up and supporting our community. Also, thank you for Council for all their support and help in our event. There were thousands today. It was unbelievable. And it wasn't thousands in one area, like it was right throughout the whole of Jackson Court. It was wonderful to see that this is why 74% feel connected, because community traders have come together. They worked. They were very anxious that nobody would turn up, and they did. And I know that fellow councillors tried to get there but couldn't find a park and had to get to council meeting. But yes, I turned up in my gear and scared a few people, had some tears of children until they realised it was me. But, you know, it was all good. No, but seriously, it's just really, it's a great news story. It's wonderful to see, and it's wonderful to see small business has hurt over the last couple of years, and it's great that people are connecting, and it was just so wonderful to see young families. And it's just a reminder that when community through our traders, you know, work with council, great things happen.
Sorry, time. Thank you. Sorry, our machine stopped working for a bit. Thank you, Councillor. I'm glad it was such a huge success too. Councillor Lightbody.
Thank you. And thank you, Michelle, as well. It is our last meeting for this term as Mayor and Deputy Mayor. And I'd like to talk about actually the last event that I was able to go to in an official capacity as Deputy Mayor. I think it was a great event run by the newly formed Australian Indian Cultural Society. They had the Diwali festival, not last weekend, but the weekend before. And it was a great festival about the importance of light compared to darkness. And they had an amazing group of dancers and performers at that event, as well as some amazing butter chicken. The food was fantastic. a bit spicy, I think, for some. But I'd really like to thank their president, Gurpreet Miglari, and the rest of their committee, which only formed a few weeks prior to this event and managed in those few weeks to pull together what was an amazing night. It was a 5 or 6 hours long event that was very well curated, always something happening. They got the kids are up dancing. They got me up dancing for a little bit. I don't think there's any videos, thank goodness. But they also had a whole lot of really great businesses exhibiting. There was some local businesses as well as some specifically like Indian cultural businesses around there. I tried some traditional teas, some traditional spices. So I think cooking at home is going to be a bit wild over the next few weeks while I work my way through all the different spices. But I think it was a really fantastic event, and I hope that they can continue it in the future. So thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Lightbody, and I was very sorry that I had to miss it. Thank you for attending. Other Councillor Chen.
Finally, it's my turn. It's so amazing. I just want to touch on the ComSafe Forum, the Community Safety Forum, that was run by the Victoria Police at Manningham Function Centre upstairs on 19th of October. The forum explored topics including young people, family violence, road policing, and drugs and drug-related crime. They also talk about the current crime trends and crime prevention. There were panel and questions taken from the audience throughout the event, very engaging. And I'm pleased to learn that according to the second Victoria Police Community Sentiment Survey 2023, Manningham is ranked the second safest municipality in Melbourne. So, which is an amazing event. That means our community feels safe. And also the second one is in our role as a council member of Metropolitan Transport Forum. Manningham Council takes part in MTF bus advocacy campaigns, including mayors and MPs on buses, our mayor and me on buses. Unfortunately, our MPs were a bit busy, were able to attend the bus ride. We also have Better Bus online survey. The survey responses will help both the NTF and Council to advocate better services. The survey is confidential and will close on Sunday, 12th of November. I encourage our residents to take part a survey and at ntf.org.au/buses and let our voice heard by the state government, because our municipality is the only municipality in metropolitan Melbourne that is not served by a train. We only have
time. Sorry, Anna, I was distracted by listening to you. I wasn't looking to the clock. It's time, Councillor.
All right, please fill in the survey and let the government know.
Thank you, Councillor. Others? Councillor Stephen Mayne.
To briefly report back on 2 annual meetings. So 4:30 this morning, I think I drove past the Doncaster Hotel and noticed that the venue was closed, but the sign still said it was open for 20 hours. So the Endeavour Group AGM was on this morning in Sydney, a 3-hour slugfest between the Pokies billionaire, Bruce Matheson with 15%, and the rest of the board, who were saying, go away, Bruce. Anyway, Bruce is upset that the company's done early implementation of the shorter Pokies hours, closing from 4 till 10, but the venue here and others around the place still had the old signs up. So I asked the question, are you for real about this? Are you going to stick with it, or is it just PR spin? And the chairman gave an assurance that they would move to correct the opening hours of the venues to the new shorter hours, mandatory closure from 4 till 10, as soon as possible. So looking forward to seeing some new signs at the shopping town and the Donny Inn reflecting this. The other AGM I went to today was Living and Learning at Ajani. Quite a different scene. It was quite uncomfortable listening, sitting there as the ward councillor, hearing about the $105,000 loss, the struggles post-COVID, the need to make the programs manager, Sandra Turtle, who was made redundant after 23 years in a restructure. She'd done a fantastic job with the programs, but it is tough for our community houses. And I guess the message I want to say is that I know that Burundara is giving $100,000 a year to each of their 10. I know that we're giving less. And just like when Doncare closed many of their op shops and we weren't given notice, we need to keep the tentacles out there, colleagues, when our organisations are struggling. I felt very uncomfortable sitting there at a financially strong council, hearing of these struggles and these volunteers battling to stay financial, $105,000 loss, reserves down to $97,000, and people being retrenched. And I think next year when we do the budget, maybe we can step up and provide some more support to our volunteer-run community organisations and not have to sit through uncomfortable AGMs like that, where frankly it's a bit embarrassing hearing of that sort of grief. And I know we are generous, but we're not as generous as many of our neighbours.
Time. Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Laura Main.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm not sure if I'm allowed to repeat reports, but I'd like to echo the sentiments of Councillor Kleinert and congratulate both of yourself and Councillor Lightbody on your year. As Mayor and Deputy Mayor, you've both carried yourself with confidence and composure and have flourished in your respective roles. And we'll hear more about that on Thursday. Plug. And second of all, leading on nicely from Councillor Stephen Main's report, it was great to attend the Doncare AGM today and hear that they are opening a new op shop in Tunstall Square. So I thoroughly look forward to that opening and I cannot wait to shop and get all my new bargains there. Thank you.
Thank you, Laura Main. Councillor Kylie Lang.
Thank you. I just wanted to report that a few councillors attended the Warrandyte Senior Citizen celebration of the historic Persian Mehran Festival. Mehran Festival, to get it right. Mehran standing for love, affection and friendship. And it really was an evening of bringing people together, generosity, as well as the most delicious food ever. And just to add on to what Councillor Main said about Doncare, it was at this AGM, it was actually really pertinent to see how many services Doncare provide for our community and how they're operating, productively in a very difficult climate after the pandemic.
Thank you, Councillor. Any other reports? Councillor Goff.
Yes, Madam Mayor, these ones are affecting some people here. Thank you very much. Now, the first one is, I'm just going to ask if we, I suppose the question is, or the statement to start with is that driving around, I do see quite a number of road defects. They call potholes, yes, and there are quite a number of them growing. The weeds, I have seen a bit of improvement with that, with them being taken out all over the place, and I congratulate the department on that. However, the roots are still left there, so we need to get some way of either obliterating those roots, otherwise they grow back straight away, but there has been a lot of clean-up in that. However, as I'm driving around, I'm seeing a lot of bitumen being sheeted off the top. That's the start of a pothole. As soon as water gets into bitumen, if anyone knows anything about roads, it underdoes the substandard and we get a bigger hole and we have a greater problem. Now, just on that, there are people that are building and doing things and drains go through underneath. Someone comes through and cuts the road and then it's got a seal placed on top. They drop down after a short while. I don't know who's responsible for it, but ultimately it's us. In Rose Avenue, by the way, there is a massive one that is quite deep and does affect the suspension of motor vehicles, including blue BMWs. And also in Porter Street, a lot of sheeting off the road there. So that's the one thing. I'm wondering if we can have somebody go around and just drive through over the main feeder roads that Manningham controls. So I'm not asking the main roads that the state government are in charge of, but we do have some major roads. Now, Rose Avenue is not one of those, but I'm just telling you there's one there. But the major roads, so that we are getting a smooth ride around the area and those potholes aren't going to ruin those roads that we are holding. The second one is about North East Link.
Time.
Oh, gosh.
No extensions.
No extensions. Unless you want to give it to Councillor Conlon to read. Yeah. Councillor. But before you do, Councillor Goff, would you like the CEO to respond to your question?
Please.
Thank you for the question, Councillor Goff. We do regular inspections of the roads that are under our control, but we'll concede that when we have storm events or when we have had maintenance works done on roads, that we can have some deterioration appear that might occur between inspections and the like. So we certainly, just as you've done with Rose, we would encourage community members to let us know. Obviously, when we pick it up, we'll go out there and repair it ourselves off our own bat, but after storm events and the like, they can appear. There can be deterioration in surfaces, so we do encourage members of the community to report that into us.
Thank you, CEO. I'm sure Councillor Goff caught all of that explanation. Councillor Conn, would you like to make a report?
Sure. It'd be helpful to have an update on the issues around North East Link, including the dust that's been kicked up, the road cleaning in the area, particularly around Bulleen Road, and I think Noel Street. Is that yes? Yep, is now being used as a rat run. So I think we could take that on notice. That would be great. I had also a question. It's hay fever season, in case anyone didn't know, like while I'm dying here. But Springvale Road, it goes up to the Reynolds Road. Now, I just want clarification. I know that it is a state road. We have the footpath. We've made this fantastic footpath along there. And now there is grass, it's this high, and every time I drive down that road, I start, like my eyes puff up, and because it's not being maintained. Can I just clarify, is that a council maintenance issue, or is it, I think they own the drain, but I'm not sure who owns that little bit between the drain and the footpath.
Would you like to respond, Helen? Yeah.
Put your mic on.
Microphone. Helen, who is our Acting Director City Services. Thank you, Helen Napier.
So all the main roads in Manningham, we've got under a contract, so it's a shared arrangement with DET, Department of Transport, so they contribute and then we actually put on a contractor to do that maintenance.
So can I ask about the frequency of maintaining that, because it is literally at least a metre.
Yeah, we're on 3-week rounds at the moment, so it's obviously going very quickly. I will get that looked at, but yeah, we are reviewing the rounds as well.
Thank you, Helen, and thank you, councillors. Thank you, councillors. I always enjoy that part of the meeting. So I'm going to move to item number 18, confidential reports. Do I have a mover? Councillor Michelle Kleinert.
That council close the meeting to the public pursuant to section 66(1) and 66(2)A of the Local Government Act 2020 to consider the following item. 18.1, CEO Performance and Remuneration Review 2022-2023.
Thank you, Councillor Kleinert. Do I have a seconder?
I second the motion, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Lang. All those in favour? Thank you, councillors. We will now be closing this meeting to members of the public, and I think the live stream has already ended, to consider the confidential reports. So thank you for joining the meeting, everyone. No, so we can turn our mics off.